Hello and welcome back. So finally started to film another video. I've been working on this idea or this structure for a bit now, and I finally did a lecture or a talk at Chapman University to their business fraternity, and I was able to kind of organize my thoughts a little more, and now I feel ready to share. Again, all of these things are based off correlations that I've seen, based off my experience, based off of my client's experience, and just all the breathing patterns that I've seen have these elements to them. So, I want to talk about expanding capacity. And the talk that I did was on speech and being able to regulate your nervous system when you're speaking, and how to downregulate, how to relax. And we talked about the breaths per minute spectrum. And, if you want to pause, I do have another video that tests your breaths per minute, or start a timer and count how many breaths you currently are taking in 1 minute. And that will give you a gauge, so you can kind of play around with this idea of this capacity to increase and decrease breaths per minute with ease, essentially. And that's what capacity. And the talk was also about the power of breath. And I think when we talk about the idea of obtaining power in any form, right, it really involves first having a large container, having mobility, having a capacity for which this force and velocity of life, of movement, can enter and can be efficient. So let's begin. So if you have checked your breaths per minute, it's something that you're aware of within yourself, you can say, okay, so you just took 12 breaths in 1 minute. Now, what I've found is there's this space, this spectrum, let's say from 8 or 9 breaths a minute to 12 to 13. That's this transition from a more active state to a calmer state, so more parasympathetic, rest and digest within this range. When you get to the lower ranges, that's the capacity that you build, is to maintain that calm within less breaths. But if you were to try that now and not have that capacity, that may cause this sense of panic or desire for air, or what Buteyko method calls air hunger. I like desire for air. It's not too much of a negative, like, hunger idea. And so if my average is 12, and then I practice a box breath, so again, kind of now we're starting to refer back to my previous videos. So if you haven't done that, please do. This will make more sense. So if I have use the 4 corners of the breath, or the 4 aspects, I'm going to inhale 3, hold 1, exhale 3, hold 1. That is only 8 seconds for 1 breath cycle, starting with the inhale, okay, the hold, the exhale, and the hold. And I always want to leave space for, a pause, unless I am getting into a higher breaths per minute. I'll get into that. So that's 7 to 8 breaths per minute. And again, 8 seconds for the cycle. If I did the box breath, and I inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4, that's 16 seconds, which is 3 to 4 breaths per minute. So you can see all of these ratios are bringing you to a space along this spectrum. So if I were to look at breath of fire, there's different speeds. So I can do 1 every second, or 2, or 3. So now you're getting way up into the higher breaths per minute range, which can be very activating. It can also cause this sense of air hunger, desire for air, if the action is not efficient. But as you can see, these breathing patterns can just be placed along this spectrum. And the spectrum is important because it helps to understand the depth of our capacity. And so when I was speaking, I spoke to the fact that there is no right or wrong. It's experiencing the whole spectrum. And, you know, yesterday or last night I went and I did this VR experience. And you put the VR on, and it took you through this meditation. You use your eyes. Okay, how you feel? I feel great. I feel inspired. And then I'm assuming that it takes that algorithm and gives you the experience based on how you feel. And I could tell that the breath was really fast. You could breathe out and breathe in, and you see the light. And I'm trying to keep up with it. I'm like, that's not calming. That's relaxing. I mean, that's activating. And afterwards, of course, like, oh, how was it? And I said, you know, the breath could be a little slower. And the woman laughed and she said, well, most people with a deeper practice say that there should be a pause. But the other co-founder doesn't practice breath. And that is a comfortable breathing pattern for him. So as you can see, we're trying to get a feeling of comfort. And that feeling will expand as we are able to expand the ratio. But that's what we're searching. That's how you expand capacity. So if we're gently just finding those spaces of gentle discomfort, or you can consider it CO2 tolerance, which I can create a whole other video on that. So many videos. So I feel like they're bottlenecking out. So as we explore along this spectrum, we're able to access it anytime, right? So now we have the breaths per minute, and then we're going to go to emotions. We'll go to thoughts per minute in just a moment. But emotions, so what emotions elicit a higher or reflect a higher breathing rate? So we have anger, joy, pleasure, fear, anxiety. So all of these are kind of these higher breathing rates. It's more activated. In psychology, they use the term aroused, but for some purposes, people prefer to use activated. So interchangeable. And so when I get to this mid-range, like this is the breathing pattern that, for me, I hold when I'm just doing things, in a state of doing. I'm moving around, sorry for my horrible handwriting. I'm moving around, I'm active. If I am in a calm state and I'm testing my breathing pattern, I'm usually between 7 to 10 breaths per minute. Depends on, obviously, what I've been doing. And so I think this is the range, what I find is the range that allows your body to be efficient. But I have access to all of these here. If I don't have access to these patterns, how can I have access to the emotions that are more calm or meditative, right? This is the slower breathing pattern per minute, or slower breathing rate. So I want you to think about that. Like, where can you find comfort, or how do you find comfort in these patterns? So, not to add more, but to add more. So, I want you to think about this pattern, essentially. Now I'll use the green. If we're just taking a 16-second breath cycle, we can arrange that differently to have a slightly, maybe different outcome. So the same breathing pattern could also be 4 seconds in, pause, 12 seconds out, pause. That's 16. But when I lengthen my exhale, that's going to be even more calming, relaxing. I'm down-regulating, and I want to create space, though, with this. And I want this to be comfortable as well. So 12 could also be, 10, or whatever your comfortable exhale is. Remember, you're trying to create a pattern that works for you, and this is where exploration takes place. So as we get into thoughts per minute, now this is just something, I don't want to get too much into this, but I've noticed that when I work with my clients, the people who are in this, especially 15, I actually had the client the other day. We're testing her breathing pattern, and halfway through she opens her eyes. She goes, wait, am I supposed to be counting, or you? I'm like, you're counting. And then the second she closed her eyes, I was like, she's 15 breaths a minute. And she opened her eyes and she says 14. But wait, I spoke, so maybe 15? So it's this, she has so many thoughts and so many questions. The second that they finish the pattern, they kind of open their eyes for validation or to comment or to go, wait, well, what happened? Did I do it right? So there's always, you know, this chatter, this conversation. When somebody is able to be comfortable here, they're able to have this calmer demeanor within the practice, less worry about what's happening, and they're able to focus on the image and the feeling. So thoughts dissipate, and then this is, I think, where imagery really can occur. And you know, that's the funny thing, that's the first time I kind of made that connection. That's cool. So, yeah, so thoughts per minute, emotions, breaths per minute. All of this, what I want you to take from this is there's no wrong ratio. I want you to register how that ratio makes you feel. When does it become challenging? Set a time. So time is a structure where we can notice change. Take a pattern and only notice it for 3 minutes and do just that 3 minutes and see how that 3 minutes transforms, and then see how the feeling transforms. If something challenging, try to relax into it. And you don't always have to work your capacities. You know, sometimes you want to be calm and you just want to, you know that this breathing pattern is accessible and can give you that sense of calm. You know, you're not trying to expand, and you know, the expansion happens very naturally as you relax out into the expansion. So that's what I have for you today. And I think next time I'm going to talk about force production and levels of force production, because that's coming up with my clients a lot lately. So thank you for joining me again today for this little talk. Please leave your comments below. I love hearing your comments and questions. So yeah, stay tuned for more.